Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Please Welcome. This is a monthly opportunity to learn from some pretty incredible people in our community who are leading and innovating. A few months ago, we talked about fundraising with our guest, Nicholas Engblom from the University of Minnesota Foundation. And shortly after that, our gala season really kicked up. We got busy, and it got us thinking more about how and why gala fundraisers are so incredibly important and what makes them successful. So again, as a quick reminder, we here at Heroic, we are a corporate event AV partner, and we work with companies and organizations of all sizes. For our associations and org clients, we work on a tremendous amount of fundraising events throughout the year. But let's be honest, the success of a gala fundraiser is primarily how much money is raised for the mission at hand. But it's not as simple as just having really great silent and live auction items for people to bid on. It helps, but there's so much more to it than that. So to dive into this topic today, we invited Glen Fladeboe, the resource of all resources, to join us today. So welcome, Glen.
Kitty, it's fun to be with you. I'm excited to have this conversation. Anytime that I can have a conversation and I'm not asking for money is kind of a blessing. So we're going to have a blast with this.
Good, absolutely. So we wanted to bring you in because you are so well known in this space. You have created such a name for yourself and for Fladeboe Advancement. So we want to know more about you, your company, et cetera. There really was no one better to have this particular conversation. So let's get to know you a little bit. And so tell us about Fladeboe Advancement and Fladeboe Land, because we should understand the connection there as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me this afternoon. I'm excited to be here. I grew up in the auction business. My dad started our business in 1978. I'm from Welmer. I grew up on a farm just north of Welmer. And then he wanted myself and my two sisters to go to auction school to learn the business. So I was 18 years old, which, believe it or not, to date myself, in a couple of weeks, it'll be 30 years since I went to the Worldwide College of Auctioneering in Mason City, Iowa. So I was 18 years old. I went on to Hamline University and have a degree in communications. And then what happened, our dad had a number of significant health issues early in my 20s. And my middle sister, Christine, and I left our jobs. We went back to our family business, and we really focused on two key areas. So we have Fladeboe Advancement, which is a fundraising nonprofit division that works with close to 300 nonprofits a year all over the country. We're based here in Minnesota, but we do a lot of work in Chicago and the upper Midwest. And then we own Fladeboe Land, which is a business that sells farmland in Minnesota. So the roots of both businesses are from the same spot. But they kind of grew in these separate directions. And truth be told, I think, it's been a complementary business for both of them because, many times I'm in a ballroom in downtown Minneapolis and a family comes up to me and says, Glenn, we inherited a family farm. We're looking to sell it. But it's been a fascinating business. I'm truly blessed. I have met some of the most remarkable Minnesotans that give back. They volunteer, they make donations, and look at the difference, that we're making night after night, year after year for these nonprofits. Just our little company alone will raise over $40 million for our nonprofit clients in 2024.
It's incredible. That's fabulous. And how great that that this is and has become even more of a family business. You get to work with Christine. Is your other sibling involved in the business as well?
She does some work for our company. She has her own job. She has 6 kids, so she was busy as a mom. And but now we have about 15 total employees and partners and 10 other auctioneers that work with us. And so, it's a relatively large group of folks that are working on both businesses.
Sure.
And that's been the key. I've been blessed. I've hired really, really good colleagues. And in both businesses, you need people who care. And these are people that show up, they care, they want every night to be successful. And if you surround yourself with good people, you will have a good product.
Yeah. That quality of, being able to see in the auctioneer that they care, that is going to create really great results in the end, I have to imagine. You can't just get up there and go through the motions and be successful with it.
It's the single most important thing. The event I did on Saturday night was for the Alzheimer's Association of Minnesota. It was a record-breaking event. It raised $1.5 million. That's a tough disease. That's a super tough disease. You essentially lose your loved one twice. You lose them to their cognitive ability and communication, and then when they pass away. But, people come up and will say, give me a fair amount of compliments. And I've said to many auctioneers, and I felt this in my own life and my own career, I would never have become busy in this business if I didn't care. I mean, I really look at these events like Saturday night, like I have a responsibility and an opportunity to make a difference. And I really want to do the very best job that I can, not just for our business, but really, with my time on this earth, that I can look back and say, God, I was a small part of making a difference, of finding a cure for Alzheimer's or children's cancer we were just talking about, and the list goes on and on. But you do have to care, because the audience can sense right away if you're just there to be an auctioneer or if you really have heart in the work.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the primary responsibilities. So other than the obvious,
Yeah.
the primary responsibilities of the auctioneer. And we can talk about it in terms of when you are the auctioneer or anybody on your team, or how you talk about this with your team, what your expectations are amongst, with your team when they're out doing events.
Well, it's interesting that you asked this question, because our business has changed a lot. When you look at, let's say, our 300 clients coming up for their nonprofit events in the coming year, number one, 75 to 80% of why clients are hiring us is actually the pre-work. So we're looking at what was the setup, what was the show flow, how many donors did you have at these key levels? We're really consulting with the clients and the setup, the show flow, how to make the night special. A lot of that includes your work, which is how do you put energy in a room? How do you design the room that creates the right energy? How do you have the right lighting that then puts a spotlight on the right individual? So the pre-work is much more of our business than actually providing the auctioneer. Whether I'm the auctioneer or the other auctioneers that are on our team, our main responsibility from an auctioneering standpoint is really literally, as we say, take the ball from the 80-yard line and run it into the end zone. So, sell these live auction items, ask for donations in the Fund a Need giving moment, but do it in a way that's mission-based, that's inspiring, that's finding more friends, more supporters, developing passion. And really what you are as an auctioneer, you're a spokesperson or communicator on the importance of an organization.
Yeah, interesting. So we know on the production side that we have very specific tech meetings where we're doing, planning and strategy, just the heroic team. Then there are also those meetings that happen with the client. But you're having the same sorts of meetings on your side and also with the client to define those components and to know exactly where you need this to go.
Well, and I'll take this morning, for example. I was doing a follow-up Zoom with a client. I did their event 2 weeks ago. They raised $185,000. Their stretch goal was to get to $175,000. But we already were starting to work on their 2025 event to look at the numbers and figure out what do we need to do to get them to $225,000. So in many cases, we're meeting for 6 months in advance or a year in advance. But your work, is so critical. I will say to everybody at home watching or in their office, the nonprofit special events business has changed a lot in the last 5 years. And here's the main thing that I would say. When we're working on an event and there's 1,000 people at the depot, yes, we are tasked, all of us, you as the production team, us as the auctioneers and the consultants, to get them to a financial goal. But the bigger issue right now and the more consequential issue is if you have 1,000 people at the depot, if you can send 980 of those folks out the door, fired up and passionate about your cause, you will have a 5-year influence to the organization. So a part of what's changed is the old world was, it was our annual event, let's do it on this Saturday night, let's try to hit this budget target. That is still somewhat the same, but the much bigger issue is it's our annual event. We've got 1,000 people coming. Let's have it be remarkable. Because if we do that, we will find 300 new friends, new partners, and new supporters, which is huge. That is the big deal. That is the big deal.
That's the momentum. That's the flywheel.
And you want people leaving feeling that there's energy, there was passion, there was excitement, that they felt emotionally moved. Like Saturday night at the Alzheimer's, I'm looking at the number on the screen that says 1.5 million. I'm looking at all these people, and I just felt thankful that Alzheimer's has now all these new friends and supporters, because that's the big deal for them.
Yeah. How do you not get emotional?
There's times that it's tough. It was actually a little hard for me on Saturday night because the woman that was honored in the feature video. The Ryan family, the Ryan companies that are, a big construction company in the Twin Cities, they were the chairs, and their sister, Kathy Boone, passed away of Alzheimer's, who hired me 20 years ago at Groves Academy. And it was hard because I did say a couple words about her before I asked for donations, but there's nights that, are difficult emotionally, but that's important, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. After I said that, I was like, that's not the right question. How do you not get emotional? Of course you're going to be emotional, but I guess you have to just remain in control of your
But the bigger
emotions.
thing is when I really think about my job, and I think about even the emotion and even sometimes the sadness that we see in the business, at the end of the day, we all of our days are numbered, all of us. And so then we have an opportunity in this moment to make a huge difference, whether it's cancer, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's Crohn's and colitis. And so I think that feeling for me trumps the emotion, which is if I can do an awesome job in the next few minutes, I'm going to have a small role in making a difference in this world, in our community. And then that's usually kind of what helps me on the emotional side of things.
Yeah. So let's talk about that collaboration between you ready to go, now it's time for the auction, and your production team. And the analogy that I often will use is that, when you walk into a room and you flip on the light switch, you expect the lights to come on. That should be the expectation with your production team. Our production team, we're behind the scenes. Most of the time, guests don't even see us, unless there's someone behind a camera. But you just know they've got this. They've got audio, they've got lighting. They're going to make me look and sound good. They're going to make sure that I am heard, I'm seen, and remembered. What does that collaboration look like to you? What is important? Let's start there.
The first thing is, and I will say this, number one, Kitty, to you and the Heroic team, I really am thankful, personally thankful and professionally thankful for the professionalism, for all the work that you've done in the community, because these nights, you need professionalism. Like, we owe it. You guys owe it to the client. I owe it to the client. All of us as vendors owe it to bring our very, very best.
Yeah.
And I think, number one, you have to surround yourself with professionals. And I am certainly not today going to speak ill of anybody else, or I will mention difficult situations that I was in. But I think you have to have a partner that is bringing their absolute best every night. I mean, because small things matter. So, for example, in our business, the most important piece of the nonprofit special event business financially is when we're asking for donations, asking the crowd for donations. It's called the Fund a Need or Giving Moment. That moment is raising 80% of all the revenue that we're raising. Okay. So this year alone, that moment will raise $33 million of the $40 million that we'll raise. And let me give you an example. If a young girl's on a stage and she's sharing her cancer story, and out of that speech, we're going to be asking the crowd to fund cancer research, we need our mic to work right in that moment, because if it's a 7-second pause, it literally could be a $30,000 difference of how much money that we will raise of the moment that you leverage. And so a big thing in our business is having the right professional partners, because yes, we need to do pre-work, but you also are operating from a mindset of every night is super important and you have to execute in that moment. And so I think professionalism, we need the right dialogue and communication before the event. Lighting is a huge issue. I just did an event at the Hilton, and it's certainly not the Hilton's fault. The lighting was a little too bright, and I had to hold my hand over my eyes to see the crowd, to call off the bidding numbers. And it's this balance between lighting the stage enough so we can show up on IMEG on the cameras, but yet not too bright so we can interact with the audience.
Right.
These are big deals, and it's
Very
really
big deals.
important issues.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So what do you do in those moments where something you're like, this is gonna send us off in a direction? What do you do?
Well, if I'm in a challenging situation, and this has happened several times just in the last couple of weeks, I'll send one of the volunteers or one of our team members that are right next to me. I'll say, hey, can you run and have them bring the house lights up or to the sound booth, or can you have them dim the spots on me.
Yeah.
So in the moment, you can manage some of this, but you really want it planned out in advance. And I will say to everybody at home, and I've said this many times publicly to our clients, when I think of your job, the production company's job, honestly, I think about 60% of your work is having the right people there that night that also have a really good bedside manner, that are really
Yes.
good to work with. Like, I'm in, I'm certainly more well known in the Twin Cities than Chicago, but if I'm doing an event in Chicago, sometimes AV companies have not heard of our company, and I'll introduce myself, and they'll be like, well, I don't know this person or whatever. But you have to have the right partner that's going to help you, because I just dealt with a situation a couple weeks ago where the lighting was way too dim, and truth be told, the lighting person was not overly pleasant when I asked them.
no.
And like, I'm thinking to myself, our job is to raise $300,000 for people who need help this night. We have got to put a smile on our faces and execute, because this is really important. And so a lot of it is just the right partner that has the right bedside manner, and also just professionalism of like, yeah, let's figure it out. Let's solve it right now, and let's do it.
Yeah. When I am on show site with our team, I love having a headset on to just be able to listen. It's super helpful for me, being, I'm always talking with clients and prospects all the time about how can we help. And so it's invaluable for me to be able to really understand how the team communicates behind the scenes. And so, of course, when you're on, you don't have headset on, you're on. You're the performer, you're performing your job. But knowing that team behind stage, behind the cameras, et cetera, they're all tuned in to each other. And you're right, in those moments, when you have to solve something, you have to be cool, calm, and collected in order to do it.
Oh, you do. And you also, I mean, I've been at so many rehearsals just in the last couple of weeks. So, it's 4:00. I'm at the depot downtown. We're doing a rehearsal. Volunteers and family members are going through their speech. And even like simple optimism of the tech hands the person a mic and says, great to see you. Have fun out there. We appreciate you being here. So much of what you're doing is creating the atmosphere that then leads to results. And I put a very high emphasis on all of us together, whether it's the auctioneer, the production company. We have a responsibility not just to hit buttons or plug things or get the lights on. We have a responsibility to bring joy to this.
Yes.
To make it positive, to cheer people on. Sometimes people are super nervous about public speaking, and little things that a sound tech can say will make them feel at ease.
Yeah.
I'm a very big believer in it's not just the service, it's how you treat people the day of the event.
That leaves a lasting memory more than anything.
And it's the total difference between A+ and B+. I mean, I see this night after night of like, we can get to B+ results. Most people, if you just kind of generally coast or just do your job, but we're not interested in B+ results. I mean, I want the very, very best, and you need, the clients that are, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And I also feel closer as an auctioneer to the production team when we feel like we're working together to make a huge difference for our nonprofits. It's something you guys have done a really good job with, that it's not just you're wrapping up and leaving the night. I think you're reflecting on what your work did for the nonprofit that night and what it means for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people who are in meetings and events, galas and fundraisers, they thrive on the fact that these are live events. But live can also bring unpredictable moments. Certainly you've seen it all.
Yeah.
You've probably experienced it all. So how do you manage those? So aside from some of the things that we've already talked about, maybe lighting not being right, you're moving this audience. You're trying to get people to raise their hands. You're wanting energy in the room. What do you do when you're getting a reaction or something is maybe going a little bit haywire and you need to rein it back in?
Energy is the number one thing, and night after night. So if we're doing 10 events on a Saturday night, I'm getting text messages from the other auctioneers. They'll either say, great night, tons of energy, or they'll say, more challenging night, less energy.
Okay.
So simple things like, let's say a speaker all of a sudden becomes super nervous and can't finish their speech. a sound person that's willing to put some bumper music or cue, a video at that moment, even if it might be slightly the wrong spot to help kind of recover
Yeah.
is super, super critical. I mean, people that feel empowered to do that, or people that are, I've had many people that have preferred a lavalier mic, but in the execution of it, it didn't come out as well as they thought. The sound wasn't great. And, somebody to run up there right away and give them a handheld and say, just keep it close.
Yeah.
I think being ready to go on the fly is super helpful. The other part of your question that I think is interesting, and I actually really enjoy about the business today, authenticity is key. So the old world 15 years ago, these events were much more scripted of like, oh, this is coming, this is coming. What we're really trying to draw out now is a feeling of authenticity. So even if that speaker is nervous and they stumble on their words, but it's real, sometimes it's going to be more impactful or powerful. So sometimes it's also stepping back and letting authentic moments be what they are. And then our job, of course, is to execute right after that and paraphrase the importance of the moment. But, overall, I think there's not been very many disastrous nights. I mean, we've had some really significant challenges where the power went out or something, but overall, I think, we've found ways to create the very best outcome with what we've had.
Yeah. So technology has changed everything. It's changed every industry, every profession. Certainly in your industry, technology has made galas and events more efficient. I love the fact that you're all registered before you get there. You've got this app on your phone. It makes it fun to look at the items and watch things and bid. Talk about that a little bit, because you've seen all of that technology emerge during your time.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example, a simple one. We all have iPhones or smartphones. Even a simple video from somebody recording it for 30 seconds and sending it to the show producer and saying, hey, you're selling my live auction item, feel free to play this video. On Saturday night, I was selling, at the Alzheimer's Gala, I was selling a trip to Mexico with Martin Zeller from the Gear Daddies, Minnesota guy that is very well known. He lost his mom to Alzheimer's.
Oh, I didn't
He
know
recorded a
that.
quick iPhone video, sent it to the client, and said, hey, I hope you bid on this item. You're going to come down to Mexico. I'm going to do an in-home concert. It's 6 blocks from my house, the house that you're going to be staying. I will do whatever I can to make a difference for Alzheimer's. I sold that item for $16,000, and he offered it twice, so it raised $32,000. If he wouldn't have sent that 30-second iPhone video, and it was grainy, it was gritty, it was not perfect, but it was real, it was authentic. He made $10,000 more money for Alzheimer's on Saturday night because of that video. Simple things like that. Now we can send a quick video 2 hours before an event, and you can put it up on the screen. We could never do that 10 years ago, really.
No.
Things like that. Bidding on phones and mobile devices, putting up in real time how much money we've raised. A growing graph on the screen that says, oh, we're only $18,000 away from $600,000.
Yeah.
The business is very different with the tools today.
Yeah. So you mentioned you went to auctioneering school. So sometimes we go to auctions and you've got what you understand as the traditional auctioneer that has what do you call it?
Chant, the bid calling chant.
Okay, the chant, yes. I've been to many events with your team, and none of them do the chant. What's the difference?
Well, every night, even my chant is a bit different. If I'm selling a farm at a land auction in Montevideo, Minnesota, I will sound different than I do on a Saturday night because of the nature of that. To answer your question directly, though, in the nonprofit business, many nights you're with people that have never been to an auction before.
Okay.
So as an auctioneer, if you're bid calling or chanting super quick, kind of in a traditional sense, people don't understand, are you at 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, et cetera. So you're slowing that chant down because of the dynamics that you're in. But then there are nights that my auctioneering is much faster, even at the nonprofit events, if I have momentum in a room. One of the first things they teach at auction school is just keep asking for money if people are giving money. So, if I'm going from 3,000 to 15,000 and super quickly just keep going. But most nights we do have to slow that down for our nonprofit clients because they're just generally confused or they're not auction going folks.
Yeah.
So
what do you do when you have lulls And you feel like
It's tough.
it's
It's a good question. And it's one of these days I'll be all gray, and it'll be the lulls that made me all gray. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll stop and I'll have the MC re-announce the item, so it's an in-home dining experience. Frame kind of the interest in the item. Sometimes I'll stop and tell a joke. Sometimes that I'll highlight why I think the item's important. The other thing though that is a blessing, a real blessing for us, and myself, I've been doing this for so long. Generally speaking, I have a pretty good idea of what stuff is worth in the Twin Cities.
Okay.
So if I'm selling an in-home dinner, depending on who the chef is, that item is worth between $5,000 to $8,000, or in that category. So if the bidding stalls at $7,000, a lot of times I'll just say sold and move on because I'm at a price of what it's worth. Now, if that item is worth $7,000 and I'm asking for $2,000, then I've got a problem on my hands because it should be worth selling for $5,000 more, and then you'll have to stop. The key, though, is to do it in a balanced way that you don't overdo your welcome. Because if the crowd if they're done bidding, they're done bidding. And you have to move on and keep it lighthearted, too.
Yeah. Do you ever sweat? I mean, do you have those moments where you're like, oh, God, this isn't going well?
I will say there's a lot of people in the community that have far more important and difficult jobs than I. But this can be a hard job. I mean, standing in front of 800 people, and sometimes they don't want what you're selling. I've there's been many times early in my career that I left the Hilton or the Depot. I'd call my dad, and he's 81 now, and I'd say, Dad, nobody's ever going to hire me again. That was a complete disaster. I don't see as many situations like that, but there's times that it's difficult that you don't have the interest on items. But I've found those if we do our homework and we communicate well, you're going to get to a B+ level if you've done your homework and the client's done their homework.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rare that we'll have a C night or a C+ night.
Okay. At times when there's a big item, it's going for a lot of money, it's clearly a popular item. The decision to say, let's offer a second one, is that on the fly or is that planned? You just know that
80% of the time that it's planned, that I'll know in advance. Like Martin Zeller told us that we could sell 2 of his home vacations. But there's 20% of the time it's not. Like all of a sudden I'll be selling a dinner and the chef is right there and he's like, Glenn, I'm willing to do 2 of them because I want to make a difference.
Okay.
And then sometimes you can open the door to that. Like if a chef is standing next to me and I'm asking for $14,000, I can put the mic down and say to the chef, would you be willing to do 2 of these? And most times they'll say yes.
Yeah.
I won't ask the chef if the price isn't great because it's got to make sense.
Right.
But
Yeah, that makes sense. So what happens after an event?
Well, a lot of it is the details following up. I mean, I think the big thing that we do is we look at the data right away. We're a very data-driven company, so we want to look at the number of people that gave, the levels that they gave at, the participation rate during the fund and need giving moment. To our clients, I mean, they're reaching out right away. The very best are reaching out saying thank you, acknowledging their donors. But what you don't want to do is just walk out and then not think about this for 6 months. Because like as a company, every Tuesday, we're analyzing the results from the last weekend because we have case studies then. We know the changes in the business by looking at the data. So the data is really critical for us as a company because there's things that change. I mean, right now, one of the things that we're working on is elevating the number of people that are giving lower dollar gifts. What's happening, I think, in the economy is the folks with a lot of resources are doing well. The stock market's at 40,000 and you can get return on money in a checking account and a banking account. But for some folks, inflation has hit them hard, and we're looking at how to, move the needle for some of the lower dollar donors. But you can't do that unless you're looking at the data because the data is showing us the trends that we're seeing.
Yeah. There's so much behind this that I think a lot of people just aren't aware of. And like I said in the intro, it's so much more than just having really hot items for a live or a silent auction. So what you do is fascinating to a lot of people.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed the business, and I feel grateful that we had this opportunity to, hopefully make a positive difference in the community, and we certainly raised, hundreds of millions of dollars. But I'm also in rooms with really good people. I mean, I'm in rooms with people that are super successful, some that more so financially or less so. But I'm usually not in ballrooms with people who don't care. I'm in ballrooms with people that look at life and say, with my time here, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to volunteer or give back. And that is the blessing. I'm with the very best of our state.
Yeah. we get the opportunity to work with you quite often. When you're working with other agencies or other production teams, what advice do you have? Like, what sorts of things would you walk into a new relationship with a client or a production team and say, hey, here's how this is gonna, how we're really gonna do this together well?
Well, and a big part of that, like when we're hired with a new client, let's say we've not worked with that client. So the first thing we're doing is looking at their data, looking at the results, getting feedback of how their event was. And let's just say that they say to us, oh, their event didn't seem like there was a ton of energy or enough energy. So that's kind of exhibit A, like let's come in so the sound is strong, so that maybe there's bumper music leading into the night when the guests sit down. Maybe the first words that the MC says is, hey, let's make a difference, where there's energy in the room. You know, a lot of this is looking at where the client needs some additional assistance to get their event to the next level. So, you know, it's really kind of having the right strategy going into it. But then the execution, you know, you really have to execute, and you can't, you know, leave great tools in the toolbox, you know, whether it's lighting or sound or timing or simple things like having a mic on in the right moment, you know.
Yeah, it's a performance. It's that's an analogy that I use as well. I mean, we are in the meetings and events space. Galas and fundraisers fall within that. But these are performances, no different than if you were at the Guthrie or the Ordway and the curtain goes up, the event begins, and every single step needs to tie together. There should never be a second of silence.
And I'll even say this, I was just presenting to a board 2 nights ago about this very issue. Let's say that you and I, Heroic is working on a production at the convention center in downtown Minneapolis for a big nonprofit, and we're the auctioneers. And let's say that they have 400 new guests at their event. This is their job interview with those 400 new guests. It's their job interview with the public. The last thing in the world that I want is for 400 new folks to walk out and say, you know what, it was a fine event or okay. I want them to walk out and say, there was energy, there's passion, people believe in this.
Yes.
Because if we don't have a night that showcases that, the probability of getting these folks to come back or to become donors is much less. I mean, the nights that I walk out, I just did an event for Girls on the Run, which is a great program. 2 of my daughters have ran in the program.
Okay.
And it was a noon event. It was in downtown Minneapolis. There were 400 people. Everybody walked out and like you could hear a pin drop. They were just so excited about the energy around this event.
Yeah.
That is bigger than the $185,000 that they raised. They will
Yes.
literally raise another $100,000 in the coming years because of the energy coming out of that. And I think all of us, the production team, your team, my team, we have a responsibility with the client to deliver. So we're sending a message, go, there's energy behind us. Partner with us, join us.
Yes, get involved. Really fabulous, impactful brand experiences are ones that move people to action. And so that it can be action right there in the room to give, and then it can also be the action to get involved. And that's the flywheel.
Oh, that's absolutely the thing. And the other issue, and most people know this, of course, but if we're doing an event on a Saturday night, and let's say that in the giving moment, I'm supposed to raise $400,000, almost always I'm coming into the event knowing that there's $150,000 pre-committed towards that of donors that are ready to raise their cards. But the real issue is how much organic money did we raise the night of? Okay. And a lot of times there'll be a $40,000 difference between organic giving based on the energy and the execution, the timing. The other big thing right now, we are raising substantially more money at 8:07 than 8:57, substantially more. And that's in the tune of $30,000 or $40,000. And so, you know, like your line of work, I think 15 years ago, there was probably a bit more grace from donor attendees, like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's over at 9:30 or 9:45. We can't be 9 minutes late anymore because it's a significant amount of revenue that we're losing.
Yeah. So interesting. So one thing that I forgot to ask was if there are any questions. So for those of you who are tuning in, we hope that you have enjoyed this. This is a fascinating conversation with Glen, and I think that there are probably a lot of different subtopics that we could dig into, and hopefully we will have an opportunity to do that at another time. If people want to reach you, how should they find you?
Feel free to Google Fladeboe Advancement or Glen, Glen, at fladeboeadvancement.com. Send us an email if you want to call anytime. I'm happy to talk to you, and our team would be, even if you're not a client. So reach out anytime. And yeah, I mean, we learn too. I mean, we learn every single day in the business of changes and what's happening and what the public is saying.
We need to always be learning and changing and adapting.
We do.
Change is happening around us all the time, and it should be exciting. We know that change can be scary and hard, but hopefully we look at it as fun and exciting. So we will wrap. Again, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to work with you and to sit and have a conversation.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Great
Yes.
conversation, and we will continue the conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us as well. Please stay tuned to All Things Heroic. You can see our contact information here on the screen. We will be back on June 18th with Georgia Fort. Georgia is a force. She is an independent reporter. She is creator of Black Press and host of Here's the Truth, which is an amazing news program that you can find on YouTube and other social channels. So it's going to be another invaluable, uniquely heroic event here on LinkedIn. So we look forward to seeing you then in June.